Hello, everybody. This is Sasha from Sexpert Talks, and I am now with the amazing Julia Lally, who is such a powerful coach that I really love and respect so deeply. She's a coach both for women and for couples. She works mainly with women and power. I would really love for you to tell us more about your work.
Hi, Sasha. Thank you so much for having me here. Really great to be on. You summed me up pretty well, really. I mean, I think I would say about myself that in my mid-40s, I became very interested in sexuality. You know, I've been kind of 15, 20 years in a marriage, right? And it was like, okay, well, what the hell is this all about? And what's happening to my mojo, and why is it going south at a rate of knots? And so I began kind of exploring and reading and studying, particularly with some really wonderful teachers around sexuality, sexual pleasure, and ultimately, although I didn't quite know it at the time, empowerment. So you and I met with Layla Martin on the Tantra course. And through that, one of the things I really got from working with Layla was just a real honing of who I am as a brand, or what I want to try and bring to the world. And power and empowerment is a really massive part of that. And as we kind of talked a little bit on the pre-call discussion, I really feel it's my mission to help people reclaim sex and power back into their lives. Like, it feels like this really ancient thing that we lost, through all the kind of millennia, that somehow we are at this fruition point of, kind of fuck up, really, and how reclaiming sexuality and sexual experience, especially from a feminine perspective, can help us to reclaim that power that we have in our own bodies. And I just am very honored to do that work with people.
I love that. So I totally agree with you. It's like we have lost touch with this power, and I love that you are connecting these two forces that, of course, for me it makes sense that they are one and the same: sexuality and power. But how is it that women eventually have lost this connection? But because I have noticed that people don't really know that they have lost it. It's, my sex life is fine, everything is fine. I am powerful because I can, scream at people if I am angry. But it's such a difference between real power and real sexuality, and just this living every day, being angry as power, or being just sexual for your husband as power. Like, what's the difference?
Well, it's so interesting, isn't it? I think the answer to that is basically we are groomed as women to behave, right? Like we are taught nothing but confusion. Like, where are these wise women? Where are our elders? Where are the ones who tell us how to reclaim access to our bodies in a pleasurable way? We are taught subservience. We are taught to be nice. We are taught to offer approval to others from such an early age. So it's kind of not our fault. It's like we just go into this foggy sense of confusion, right? Mm-hmm. And, it's, and then feminism comes along, which is awesome, and kind of pushes forward in all these fields. And like, it's only a matter of decades that women have gone from actually being property. And, in some parts of the world, they still are like actual legal property, into owning property ourselves, having agency over our lives to start our own businesses, which we own, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of feel like it's no wonder we're confused, but we are gradually reclaiming. And of course, what feminism, and I'm proudly a feminist, there's lots of people in sexuality field I find who kind of dismiss feminism, but I feel like what the feminists have taught me was that power was, and I've written these down so I don't forget, these are the three things that I learned to be power. Okay, one was independence, two was dominion, So power over, and we do that in some pretty shitty ways as women. You know, we manipulate, or we guilt trip, or we passive aggressive, or, you know, or we're full out aggressive. You know, we are perfectly capable of acting violently, right, as women. And we're taught often that that's power. And the third one is sex appeal. So I'm talking about sex appeal as defined by others.
Yeah.
Right. So those were my three go-tos, you know, growing up with feminism was, okay, if I'm powerful, I'm going to be independent. I'm never going to need any help. I'm going to understand how to get dominion over others. And I sure as hell better seem sexually attractive and available. You know, then I'm at my pinnacle of power. So I became very interested in, because, you know, I worked in all those fields. You know, it's like I built a business. You know, I got myself a partner and a family, and still I was miserable, right? So I'm like, well, okay, let me keep exploring. Like, what actually is this then? And so through all the different trainings I've done, what I now do primarily is I created a system basically called the 9 Pillars of Feminine Power. And in those pillars, which by the way, you can easily access on my website. I hope that's all right to let your listeners know.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you want to get involved in anything I'm teaching, and there's loads of stuff available to you for free, you can log on to my website and get a guide, which will show you the 9 pillars, and that will follow up with a free audio training. So you get a kind of in-depth journey into each of the pillars by audio. Okay. So you can really explore what these pillars are, why you need them, and where you are at with them in your own life. So these are things that I have found to be that I absolutely must have mastery in order to be a powerful woman. But there's just, sorry, let me say one more thing, but I know you've got a question burning, is that the one place that I always start on this pillar, and we can come back to why later, is orgasm. So one of the pillars of power is sex, orgasm, and desire. And believe you me, what I discovered, the most potent thing I discovered, was that if you don't let that pillar steer your entire ship, then you will be miserable. You know, you can affect power in any of the other pillars, but if you don't have orgasm, is it even worth it, basically?
That resonates so much, and it makes so much sense. So I am hearing that, first of all, I recognize myself as a feminist too. I really believe that it's important to embrace the legacy and the power of the feminist movement, and how it has changed our life. And I'm hearing how we have gone from being property into changing this indoctrination. And I'm also hearing how these first ideas that you had about what power was were not enough to make you happy, because they somehow were still meant to be related to others. Like sex appeal was about what others thought you were. It was about showing power by having dominion over others. But I'm hearing how these other pillars that you have developed, that you have worked on, and that you share, are so more focused on this agency of being the one owning your body, your pleasure, your orgasm. So it's not this sexuality based on pleasing the man, which is pretty much what we have been indoctrinated into believing that female sexuality is, but about sexuality, making it about your orgasm and your pleasure. And I see how that has changed the whole game for you. And changed it for everybody. So I'm so curious about these 9 pillars. What if orgasm is like the steering wheel one, which are the other ones, and how do they play along?
Well, there's lots of different pillars. Some of them are pretty obvious, like money, for example, relationships, community, magic. I'm just kind of pulling some out of the air. These aren't necessarily in order. Your mission, The first pillar of power is actually clarity. So it's about coming into a relationship with what's going on within you and getting clear about that, because we're conditioned to live in confusion as women. One of my teachers, she put it so beautifully. It's like, okay, she calls it the fog, right? Like, you're either too fat or not fat enough. You're either too rich or not rich enough. You're either too bossy or you're not bossy enough. Like, something like that is always going on, generally in a woman's mind. It's maddening. It's like, where the fuck am I actually just okay?
Yeah.
Right? Where is the place in the middle where I am actually just enough?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we start to get clarity on those things, then we can begin to get into powerful relationship with changing them. But I would still argue that without the orgasm practice, we're driving at this from our head, or we're driving at this through our sense of will. I mean, I grew up really thinking that, I could will the world to give it what I wanted, which never really worked. And so when I began focusing on orgasm, really, I broke that down into 3 stages as even further. And I'll just briefly touch what they are, because when we get to the 3rd stage, I think you can really begin to see what I'm talking about. So the first stage of orgasm really works with women who are incredibly either sexually shut down, full of shame. Their trauma is manifesting in their sex, either through pain or disgust or lack of libido, or a lot of the things that women present to us who come to people like you and me. And so we have to start to really gradually thaw that system. Yeah. And then you start to come into a beautiful relationship of pleasure with your own body. And from there, I tend to move people into the 2nd stage, which is like an expansion. So it's like, okay, so maybe previously you could just climax in this one particular way. Let's start moving it, like with the jade egg. Let's get energetic. Let's find the G-spot. Let's open up the cervical orgasm. Let's go all the way with this. Yeah, like, how can we begin playing with this in our bodies? And then the 3rd stage of orgasm, which is the bit I really love and originally came through something called orgasmic meditation, which you may have heard of, is that this is the thing I really would love women to hear from me, okay? That patriarchy has conditioned us into believing that our sexual experience should be like a man's. Mm-hmm. So in other words, there's the spark of turn on, and then it's just a linear line to ejaculation, right? Yeah. And so that doesn't happen for 99.9% of us women. And so we end up going, what the fuck's wrong with me? Like, I'm not squirting, or I'm not coming in 10 seconds, or I'm hardly even coming. And what I love about orgasm as a practice is that it follows the woman's body. So it goes with the rise and fall, and it actually begins to develop a sense of nutrition in her body. So we can begin to use turn on and the amplification of turn on as a way to actually feed a woman nutrition. And from that place of fullness, from that place of being sated, or that gorgeous place of just having turned on embodied experience as a kind of lived moment to moment experience of our lives, we can start to use that as fuel into all the other pillars. So for example, if you want a relationship, let's say you want a heterosexual monogamous marriage, that's your idea of heaven, right? Mm-hmm. You can begin to come at that dream and that ambition and that intention from a filled place of nutrition, in which case you're much more likely to make that happen. Or if you pull off a business, for example, if you're full and you're vibrating with pleasure, people are going to respond, your business is going to grow, you're going to enjoy it, whatever the hell happens. So that's the journey I tend to take women on. Like, it starts with understanding what the pillars of power are, It starts with exploring that. But then if you really want to start working deeply with me, we've got to get to your sex.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And there are so many points of this that I really want to underline that I'm blown away by, and I really see how they have changed my life, and I personally I have seen it as well. And it's like how first of all, these pillars that you mentioned are things that have been revoked from women's control for a long time. Like we have been treated like if we were unable to have clarity, like if our hormonal bodies were unable to deal with clarity, like if there's constantly something wrong with us. Money, how many times have we as women been told that our work should be, maybe not directly, but at least indirectly, that our work is not worth paying, right? Like what we do at home is not worth paying. And if we do things outside the home, we should charge less because, you know, we should support. Like it's like this idea that our work is not worth money. And it's unavailable for us unless it comes through a man. And then that takes me to this, again, to orgasm. Like we have been taught that orgasm, when it comes to women, works for a man, and it comes through a man. Like a man gives us an orgasm, and we are meant to have an orgasm for them to tell them, hey, good job, guy.
You did really well, hon.
Right. So it's about reclaiming.
What a man.
Yeah, you're a good guy. It's about reclaiming our power, something that was always ours, and how that shifts everything.
Yeah, and you know, the men are caught in this too, because, you know, those lovers I've had in my life who have known how to listen to the ebb and fall of my orgasmic journey, oh my God, it's like somehow they got beyond their own ego and they just served that. They served my orgasm. Yeah. Bless those men, right? And those men were, they see the reward to those men. So like when I've taught classes and the men have said, yeah, but will I get, yeah, but will she reciprocate? Will I get to ejaculate? And I'm like, dude, you know, you want to ejaculate or you want the whole universe surrendered before you? I mean, what do you want? What do you want? You know, like broaden your horizons. And I think that's the thing, is that if you know how to open a woman's sex, and so many men are yearning to do this, if you really know how to open a woman's sex and you do it by paying attention to the rise and fall of her orgasmic pleasure, I totally believe this, then the whole world opens up to that lover, to that man.
I love that so much. Just this week I was talking with, I created a video speaking about that, like this idea that the female craves to surrender to the masculine. And I dare to challenge that. And I say, it feels to me like the masculine needs to surrender to our orgasm, to the feminine energy and the feminine pleasure, because when they surrender to it, they are in for a ride. They are going to ride the waves of real pleasure and orgasm in ways that they cannot even imagine.
Totally. It takes a hell of a guy to do that as well. You know, I'm thinking of one lover in particular who was just like, you know, would not, was very, very masterful, but would not surrender. And this is another thing, is that I personally believe, is that raising power without surrender is abuse.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, beware any lover who's able to, in fact, beware any person who's able to raise power without somehow being surrendered into softness at the same time, or, you know, without this is what they say in the BDSM world, right? It's like, you can't really dom until you've subbed. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, although I'm interested in it, but, you know, you need to understand what it is to be the vulnerable party here in order to really be able to lead there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Totally, yes. And then one part that I also want to explore further is how orgasm as nutrition works, right? Like I have seen, because it becomes very evident, how women that stop nourishing their self with orgasm just start being drained away. It's like their life energy is drained. You can see that in their force, you can see that in their face, in their body, how they carry their bodies. And on the other hand, women that keep on nourishing themselves with their own sexual energy are just a full powerhouse that can change the world no matter the age. They are like ageless goddesses.
Yes, I completely and utterly agree. And of course, those women who are burned out or kind of permanently irate or stressed out and empty, those are the kind of women that you and I coach, right? I mean, that's what we have to offer women like that. And certainly, you know, if you have a sexuality as a practice, then you have a kind of daily dose of vitamin orgasm, right? Like you have that nutrition coming in. And the thing is about being filled up from that place or being full from that place is that everything flows. You know, it's like your boundaries become effortless. You know, you feel sovereign. You know, it's like the difference between feeling permanently under attack and kind of like you're inside a hard shell to feeling open and full and in relationship with the world. You know, and oxytocin, like as a hormone, you know, like for example, if you stroke the clitoris, for example, you will flood. In fact, you know, the kind of tantric peaking exercises where you stroke the clit and you play with the peaking, so you never quite go into climax, but you let that sensation and pleasure flood through your body. You will absolutely flood your system with oxytocin, and that is a powerful state changer. You know.
Yeah, and that just gives you enough energy to create everything else in your life, right? To create safer relationships with money, with your partner, with your surroundings.
You feel safe, you feel connected. And you know, is it any wonder that all the institutions of our societies never taught us this? So, you know, you go, you know, did you get taught this at school? I mean, my 12-year-old son just had sex education in 2019 in the UK. And I said, did they talk about consent? No. Did they talk about the clitoris? No. What's that then? So, of course, I told him, which puts him way ahead of the game, right? Yeah. But that's, you know, it's like in church, religion, you know, where are we taught access to this kind of power? And it's coming through, right? It's coming through in so many ways. It's like we're at this tiny slither, this place in history where you and I can have this conversation without fear of being burned, right?
Yes.
Right? Like, how lucky is that? So let's ramp it up.
And also to be lucky enough to be able to share it with the world via the internet, right? Like it used to be something that people could share if they were lucky enough, like in a temple in some remote jungle. But now we are able to share it one-on-one through the internet, and that makes the world like expansive. And even when it makes us like it's closer and expansive at the same time.
That's it. We can reach more people. Absolutely.
So beautiful. Oh my God. I'm so excited for people to get to know more about you. I know that there is so much more that they can learn from you. Just this conversation has been so nourishing, and so I'm just radiating it. Because that's what happens with sexual energy. It's contagious, right? It's like the Kundalini energy, the sexual energy, its life force is contagious. So you just see somebody vibrant with sexuality and sexual energy, and just start feeling that vibrancy as well. It's a permission to exist in all of your power.
Permission to exist, absolutely. Yeah. And access to the teachings of old, which are basically rising and coming back through. It's a privileged time to be alive.
Yes, that is so powerful. Oh my God, thank you so much for this interview. Before we close it, I just want to remind people, you can reach her through her webpage. The information is going to be in the comments, in the description of the site. She's offering the 9 pillars of power, which is a description of each and every one of these pillars, and a lot of more free content and information. So don't miss out. You really need to get in touch with her.
I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this interview. This has been so nourishing.
Wonderful.